last summer, I met up with some friends at my sailing club. Some of my friends are older than me, and so they were about to graduate high school. I asked them what their plans were after graduation, and the things that I expected to hear from them were, for example, all about their university courses or apprenticeship opportunities that they were excited to participate in. But the answer that I received instead was, I'm going to take a gap year and travel the world. I don't know about you, but when I heard the term gap year, I didn't know what to imagine. Does it mean traveling to a specific country and learning about their culture and language? Does it mean traveling all around the world, doing apprenticeships and finding jobs to earn your first paycheck? Does it mean staying here in Hamburg and playing video games for an entire year? Or is it just that people are scared of missing out on their life if they directly go to university after graduation of high school? That because they don't know what they want to do yet, that they don't want to waste their time on doing something and then starting all over again once they notice that they don't like this subject. All of these reasons I heard when asking people why or why not they didn't take or did take a gap year. And frankly, I was really confused. And so I started asking my family and friends. I started off by asking my grandfather. My grandfather is the silent generation, which means he was born after World War II. His two life mottos, which he lives by, are number one, don't show your feelings because your feelings will be used against you. And number two, if you want something, work as hard as you possibly can to achieve it. And do not rely on other people to do it for you. After knowing those two things about my grandfather, it wasn't surprising to hear his response. He told me as he has to build up everything from scratch, he didn't have the time or money to even think about what he wanted to do in life or if he wanted to take a gap year. Additionally, he told me that only lazy and privileged people want to take a gap year because they're traveling the world using the money of their parents to do so, while they could invest that money into their education. He told me that he believed that one can travel the world while also continuing your education. He took my brother as an example. My brother started his bachelor's in La Rochelle, France, then moved on to study in Paris, and is currently continuing his bachelor degree in Madrid, Spain. And who knows where he will be next year. While continuing his education, he not only traveled the world, but also learned 2 new languages while doing so. So after listening to my grandfather's opinion about gap years, I understood why he didn't take a gap year. But did I agree with it? Not so far. And so I went on to ask my mother on her opinion on gap years. And her response was slightly different from that of my grandfather. She told me that a friend of hers went to Australia for a work and travel year, which is similar to a gap year, but it isn't quite the same. Her friend went to Australia because she was curious about the culture and language and all that entailed for taking a gap year. When she came back, she was more prepared, more mature, and more self-sufficient to actually continue her education. So after just looking at this one example, one can already see the evolvement between one generation to the next, where one generation was not even thinking or considering the choice of a gap year, and the other one started to be more open towards the idea of a gap year. Additionally, my mother told me the reason for why gap years weren't so popular in her generation. She started off by telling me that her generation used to have 13 years instead of 12 of school, which gave them an additional year to think about what they wanted to do and what they're passionate about. Furthermore, she told me that all men in her generation had to participate in a social year or military duty, which meant that the men in her generation already had 2 additional years than we currently do to figure out what they want to do and what they're passionate about. And so after listening to my mother's opinion and my grandfather's opinion, I understood why they didn't take a gap year. One generation had to focus on making something of himself and being capable of supporting his family, while the other generation had more time to figure out what they actually wanted to do and pursue it. So after knowing those 2 opinions, I was curious why my friends are so keen on taking a gap year. So I started asking my friends. The responses that I got were, for one, I just want to see the world and travel, not want to have any responsibilities for a year. Other opinions that I got were, because my mental and physical health got so bad over the years when being in high school, I want to use the year to improve my mental and physical health so that I can actually gain something out of the education that I want to pursue afterwards. The next response which I got was the most interesting to me, as my friend told me that he doesn't believe in the government being capable of supporting him by the time he is going to retire. The silent generation and Gen X both believed in the government caring for their needs and retirement provision once they retire. But my generation, Gen Z, believes that that is only an illusion, that because the baby boomers are retiring currently, more people are going out of the workplace than coming back in, which means that the government is starting to create a debt that they cannot pay off. They have more retirement fees to pay that they actually get taxes in to pay them. So by the time Gen X is going to retire, the problem is going to be even worse. And so my generation believes that that is not an option for us, that we do not want to depend solely on the government to make our life a good life and the best life it could be. And so my generation believes, why should we go after a future and invest into our future when the future we're working towards is no longer a safe and secure future? And so, lastly, the answer which I received from my friends were that they're going to do a sort of work and travel year, the same thing my mom's friend did, where they travel around the world or stay in Hamburg to find a job or an apprenticeship, which they do over the year. My friends are between the ages of 17 and 19 years old. Some of them are not even adults yet when they're graduating. How are they supposed to know what they want to do in life? What their purpose is? And so, what is the right opinion? Is the right opinion my grandfather's opinion? My mother's opinion? Or the opinion of my friends? And frankly, I was really torn. And so I naturally started researching. And according to an Ivy scholar, a gap year refers to an intentional break taken between the graduation of high school and the start of university. It gives students the opportunity to learn new things, gain real-world experience, and develop valuable skills. Additionally, according to Yale admissions consultants, Yale University saw a 7-foot increase from 351 students wanting to take a gap year in the upcoming class of 2024, in comparison only 51 students wanting to take a gap year the previous year in 2023. Furthermore, according to Brown University, the Brink, the mental health of students drastically decreased over the past 8 years, which means that the depression rate increased by 160% and 53%, and the anxiety rate increased by 110%. Finally, according to Azure Pacific University, people who take a gap year and take an educational break during that gap year often come up with the concern of missing out or not being capable or believing that they're not capable of actually managing the workload that is going to face them when coming back to university. That because they took a too long break between high school and university, that it's a too large break to catch up and they forgot everything from the previous years. And so, what is the right decision? Some people may find taking a gap year beneficial, as one can save money for university for the year afterwards. One can figure out what they're passionate about. One can find new things to explore and actually see what the world has to offer, because this could be the best time to do so. At the point where we have to decide if we want to take a gap year or not, we have to make the decision if it's the right opinion or not. But taking a gap year can also have the negative consequences, such as feeling lonely, having unnecessary expenses, or decline in wanting to go back to school. And so, if you were in my position, would you want to take a gap year? Or do you think it's beneficial to take a gap year? Or do you agree with the opinion of my grandfather? Thank you.